Penn State already had to deal with the heartbreak of losing that double overtime game to Oregon in the whiteout. But then they got dealt some terrible news. Now they're going to be without a star player for possibly the remainder of this season.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State football, and as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. My name is Seyko, and I'm your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. Well, Penn State got dealt terrible news here. A long-term injury to star linebacker Tony Rojas. He and Amare Campbell were forming possibly the best linebacker duo in not only the Big Ten, but potentially the country. That's the way that things were trending. So can Penn State still compete at an elite level with this injury? What does the linebacker room look like moving forward? And we're going to talk about the impact here that Tony Rojas is leaving behind with this injury. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Friendly reminder, as always, to let me know your thoughts down in the comment section, and thank you to the everydayers for making us a part of your regular routine. We got to start with the injury news here. Tony Rojas out long-term, confirmed by James Franklin, but initially reported by multiple sources. Ruled out indefinitely. No specifics from James Franklin. Sometimes he will provide them, but typically he is close to the vest with that. I would err on the side of caution here. It seems like, just kind of given the mood, given the attitude of James Franklin at the recent press conference, Tony Rojas actually wiped his social media. I would say that he is probably going to be out for the entire regular season, maybe into the postseason as well. And we're going to talk about that in segment 3 of Penn State, what this does for the season outlook as well, because this is truly devastating news. This was a player that was becoming a star, that is already a star, but more people were catching on to the fact that Tony Rojas and Amare Campbell were becoming possibly the best linebacker duo in the Big Ten. Who knows, maybe even the country, with the way that these two were playing. They were the glue that held the linebacker room together and then really took this defense to another level. I mean, Rojas just flies across the football field. He runs 4.4 speed. He had sub 4.4. He's fast. He's got elite athleticism. He covers sideline to sideline. He's effective in run defense. He's great in pass defense. Who remembers the pick 6 again in the SMU game? Rojas was truly taking that next step as someone who was going to be a face of Penn State's defense. Amare Campbell immediately as a transfer comes in and becomes a face of the defense. You obviously have Zane Durant, Deni Dennis Sutton, Zachy Wheatley, but then you look for players like A.J. Harris going into year 3, Tony Rojas going into year 3, to take that step forward. Rather than just being a key contributor, you become a star. You become a focal point that offenses and coaches, opposing coaches, have to game plan for, and that's what that's what Rojas was becoming. So Penn State loses this impact. This is massive, from the amount of playing time he had, from the type of leadership and just the way that he wasn't a captain, but you could tell he's a leader of the defense out there with Amare Campbell. And that dynamic duo is now broken up, unfortunately. So Penn State's defense certainly takes a step back here. You lose the speed element of Rojas, of course. The playmaking ability, somebody that can, because DeLuca, and we're going to talk about the linebacker room a lot more in the second segment. But Rojas, with his athleticism, his agility, he was able to be effective in run defense while defending the pass as well. So he's truly a 3-down linebacker. So is Amare Campbell. DeLuca is to an extent, but there's going to be a loss in that speed element. DeLuca can't keep up with everybody, cover tight ends when needed, speedier running backs out of the backfield. Rojas could do that. And then you combine the size, you combine the athleticism, the speed. I mean, he fits the profile of an NFL caliber linebacker and was playing like it. Yep. He had a sophomore slump. He was honestly a 100% last season. He played through an injury through most of last season and still performed very well. Were there some growing pains at times? but Rojas wasn't truly himself last season. Seeing him take that step forward and become that star linebacker right out of the gate through, 3 not so competitive non-conference games, but then in the game against Oregon, it was Amare Campbell and Tony Rojas that were coming up strong all across the defense, in addition to guys like Zach Wheatley, of course, but it was really that dynamic duo. So to lose Rojas like this, it changes, it does change Jim Knowles' defense. How do you want to approach coverages when you get a tight end that's a mismatch, or a team that really likes to use their running back out of the backfield in passing situations? DeLuca is good in run defense because he is strong. He is able to reset the line of scrimmage and take on those blocks from larger linebackers. But I do worry about the speed element here, because where is Penn State going to be able to replicate that? And that's where the question is passed on to the linebacker room. Because thank goodness Penn State got Amare Campbell out of the transfer portal, or this situation would be much worse. This is a bubble bursting. Penn State, if they didn't get Campbell out of the transfer portal, it's one thing to get Campbell, but him to become a star player as well in the process and really take on this Jim Knowles defense, being that true Mike linebacker, because it didn't force Rojas to play out of position. I mean, there were discussions, would Rojas play the Mike linebacker spot, which is not his forte. It was that weak linebacker spot, to just be that guy that, hey, he can drop back into coverage. He can defend the run when you need him to. He was playing the position that was best suited for him. So fortunately for Penn State, they get Campbell out of the transfer portal. These two were the glue holding it all together, and now you lose half of that. DeLuca is a great ball player. I do believe that, but he's not as comparable to Tony Rojas. And then the linebacker room, it was a massive question mark. It's a massive question mark with Campbell, and now it becomes an even bigger question mark losing Tony Rojas. So what are Penn State's plans with the linebacker room? Well, it sounds like they're going to turn to two true freshmen going forward to see if they can step up and make a leap here. We're going to talk about them coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and keep moving the game forward. Now, Penn State didn't beat Oregon, but one player that definitely kept the game moving forward was Devontae Ross. Ross had not one, but 2 touchdowns to help tie the game and send it into double overtime for that thrilling finish in the whiteout game. It's players like Devontae Ross who keep the game moving forward. And when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. And today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, time to look back and crown this week's MVP on who delivered. Powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Penn State, I'm going with Amare Campbell. He delivered in a big way. Defensively, Penn State was phenomenal. And it was because of players like Amare Campbell. Campbell had 15 tackles. He has 37 on the season. He delivered for the Penn State defense. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, you know this performance was not a fluke. And just like Campbell delivered for Penn State, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season. You could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive and fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Penn State's going to have to turn to the freshmen. Inexperienced players are going to have to step up in this moment. So we'll break down the linebacker depth chart so it's Amare Campbell as the lone alpha at the top. I mean, this guy has 37 tackles already, had 15 of them against Oregon. He's a superstar, honestly, in this defense. He he fits so well into this Jim Knowles system as a Mike linebacker. I've already explained it in a previous show. Just watch Amare Campbell work. Just watch him go to work pre-snap. It's like having a coach on the football field. He gets the call from Jim Knowles. He sets up the defense. You ideally couldn't lose either of them, Campbell or Rojas. But Campbell, really, with the way that he's just able to just coach and be that X's and O's player, is significant for Penn State moving forward. So these next few games against UCLA, Northwestern, next couple, I should say, Iowa will present a challenge. I really wouldn't want to put, my preference is not to put inexperienced players out there, but you can get some guys valuable playing time and hopefully protect Amare Campbell in the process by not having him play so much. That was part of this too. Campbell and Rojas were playing a ton of the linebacker snaps. So you will see Campbell status quo. He's going to play as close to 100% of snaps as you need him to. DeLuca will just simply slide into the weak side linebacker spot. You lose that element of speed, and it's not, DeLuca is still a 3-down linebacker. He's just not your most athletic option. You lose that tier of speed. He's strong. He's smart. He had an interception against SMU. He had an interception against Minnesota, right? This guy is really good in pass coverage, so he can be a 3-down linebacker. But when it comes to more athletic tight ends, more mismatches, whether that's a tight end or out of the backfield, I mean, Tony Rojas could cover slot receivers. And now Penn State doesn't have that in its defense. Amare Campbell can still give you that, but it was nice to have that at your weak side linebacker when a Campbell has to account for everything at the Mike linebacker spot. So with that being said, your two starters going forward for the time being are Campbell and DeLuca at the Mike and weak side, respectively. Wiley will see an increase in playing time. He is one of the few more experienced players in this linebacker room. The thing with Wiley, because I've always talked about him as a pending breakout player, that he will go from someone that's a rotational guy to eventually somebody that is a true key contributor. But it seems like it just hasn't clicked for him. Penn State, James Franklin has talked about that before, how players, sometimes the switch doesn't flip right away, and then it does, and you just see a total change in their game. They want Wiley to get to that point. At least they're alluding to it. They say that he needs to play a little more freely. Okay. So at least there is some optimism for Wiley. But again, Jim Knowles was blunt when he said it. I only trust 3 linebackers, Campbell, Rojas, DeLuca. You're without one of those 3. Wiley is the guy that I'm going to circle and say it's almost a necessity for him to step up. And I'm going to talk about the freshmen, but I don't want to put lofty expectations on guys that haven't played any college football to this point. But Penn State's going to turn to them. They at least seem optimistic for them. Wiley has a little more athleticism, but not to the extent that Tony Rojas does, unfortunately. Penn State doesn't really have that in the linebacker room other than LeVar Arrington II. Is that one of those freshman linebackers? Again, we're going to talk about it. Sticks. Are we going to see Sticks back on the defense consistently, right? Then after that, okay, Anthony Seyko is probably a name that a lot of people are going to think of. Seyko was seeing an increase in playing time, but again, drop in athleticism. He is a true Mike linebacker. It's going to be a struggle for him in pass defense. I think he's a really good run defender, but in pass defense, he'd be more of a liability there. Then after that, guys like DaKaari Jackson. I really want to see DeLuca Nelson kind of seize this opportunity because remember, Nelson came down from the safety spot. He is somebody that would be more helpful in pass coverage. You know, maybe you work a situation where Seyko, DeLuca, they're 2-down guys, and then you can bring in a DeLuca Nelson on obvious passing situations because he has that defensive back instinct. He's played safety. He knows he has those coverage skills. It's about being trapped in the box, though, against bigger offensive linemen that are just going to take him out of the ground game. So for Penn State, I think they can get strategic here, but they also have to build the trust of Jim Knowles. Again, Jim Knowles was adamant that he only trusted 3 players. So I'm going to name players, but they have to be able to prove themselves to this Penn State coaching staff. DaKaari Nelson, Keon Wiley, veterans. Kari Jackson, unfortunately, he's dealt with bumps and bruises during his time at Penn State. I really like, when I've seen Kari Jackson at practice, I really like him as somebody, if he continues to play through things and develop at Penn State, who knows, maybe he rotates in, he's a Mike linebacker, but just kind of, assessing Penn State's options here. Then we get to the freshmen, Alex Tatch and Cam Smith, not LeVar Arrington II. This one, it didn't shock me personally because we haven't heard a lot about Arrington II a ton. He is going to go through a true development year. This is a redshirt season for him. I don't expect him to play, but that is going to come as shocking news to some Penn State fans. He wears number 11. He's the son of Penn State great LeVar Arrington, who started the number 11 tradition. Abdul Carter passes it on. They immediately give it to Arrington II. There's really no competition. He fits the status. I mean that when I say that Arrington II is the only other linebacker in Penn State's room right now that has the same type of athleticism as an Amare Campbell and Tony Rojas. However, he's not going to play. So it's not an athletic problem. It's being able to read an offense, knowing your assignments. And he didn't come in college ready either. He's had to build muscle and everything else. So kind of your typical redshirt season for a freshman. Could that change? Potentially. That could absolutely change going later on into the season. But right now, I would focus on Alex Tatch as well as Cam Smith because James Franklin named them. They're in discussions to potentially burn their red shirt. I would say that Tatch is closer to being a regular contributor as a true freshman than Cam Smith, but that's optimistic because Cam Smith did enroll later on in the summer. He didn't get that. It wasn't an early enrollee, no spring football. Tatch, though, I mean, he pushed Nicholas Singleton back into practice. So he has that strength. He plays with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and he was actually playing a good bit against Villanova. So we got a little bit of a sample size from what a player like Tatch can do as a true freshman. But Penn State isn't just going to throw him into the fire. It's still going to be pretty condensed right now with what they have. Amare Campbell, like I said, will play 100% of snaps. DeLuca probably will play an increased share, but I wouldn't say 100%. You will see a rotation of DeLuca, Keon Wiley a little more. And I'd be hesitant about Anthony Seyko. Again, right now, he hasn't shown enough. I know that people tab him as a pending breakout player, but he's just not that right now. I would honestly put Alex Tatch ahead of Anthony Seyko as long as things continue to trend in the right direction for the true freshman. It's Campbell, it's DeLuca, it's Wiley, and then Alex Tatch, if he continues to prove himself, could be that fourth linebacker in the rotation right now. So the linebacker room, it's going to take a lot. Everybody is going to have to do more than expected. Wiley really has to have that breakout moment for him and become the veteran player that they need him to be. Tatch and Smith, somebody's got to step up and show that they're more than just a true freshman, okay? And then DaKaari Nelson, who knows? Maybe they find a way to use him in passing down situations so Penn State can get strategic, but I really think it's just going to be condensed here for now to Campbell, DeLuca, and Wiley until somebody steps up. And we're going to monitor that, of course, week to week because it is important. Ohio State, Indiana, they come into question. They come into serious question. I've already talked about how Penn State could miss the college football playoff, and those games just got a lot more difficult with the loss of Rojas. Let's talk about those games specifically coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move. Whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors, this is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. You'll love how the Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, and corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. The swivel screen is a game changer. You can go from running on the Tread Plus to strength training without missing a beat. And the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged. You get workouts tailored to your vibe and energy level each week. So let yourself run, let yourself lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. That is onepeloton.com. So let's talk about those signature games for Penn State. Let's also address the fact why Penn State, linebacker U of all places, is in a situation where the linebacker room is the weakest link on the team. And we talked about that in the offseason. It was a debate. Is it defensive tackle? Linebacker kept popping up a lot. I mean, wide receiver was in there as well, but the fact that linebacker's this low on the totem pole is kind of telling. So how did it get this bad? But I want to focus on Ohio State and Indiana first in the final segment. Can Penn State win these games against either team? Well, yes, these are absolutely winnable games, but it becomes a more uphill battle. Penn State should still be favored against Indiana, and I know a lot can change so much by the time November rolls around after the Ohio State game. But being at home, I guess all the same reasons that I made against Oregon, right? Do they apply in this game against Indiana? I still believe. Here's the thing, though. Oregon is such a talented team that they can match Penn State player for player, depth for depth. I don't know that Indiana has that, but what they do have going for them is Curt Cignetti in the way that he is an in-game coach. Okay, so that's where they have the advantage. But that game becomes tougher. The Ohio State game becomes a lot tougher. To go on the road, to not have a veteran player like that, and Ohio State, above all else, is athletic. Okay? Rojas, being able to keep up with a tight end or a player out of the backfield. Max Clare is going to be effective in the passing game for the Buckeyes. Or let's take somebody like a Bo Jackson who's emerging as a true freshman. Different Bo Jackson, no relation to the Bo Jackson, but kind of fitting that a running back is taking over at the Division I level. His name's Bo Jackson. He's at Ohio State. Penn State did recruit him for what it's worth and did not win that recruiting battle. But this is a guy that's really taken over in the running back room. And Tony Rojas would be able to match that athleticism. Well, Penn State's going to have a more difficult time with that. Ohio State's offensive line is one of the best in the country too. They have been moving people just out of the way. It's easy. You can drive a Mack truck through some of these lanes that the Ohio State offensive line is paving. And when your linebacker depth takes a hit like this, especially with a star player, those games become that much more difficult. So being able to cover an elite tight end like Max Clare, going up against a guard or a tackle, things like that, just get a lot more difficult when the level of competition is that much better. Ohio State is still winnable, but Penn State, going from they were a 4.5 point underdog, that probably goes, I think Tony Rojas, that becomes a 7-point underdog situation. I think he gives that Penn State that much of an advantage. He gives 3 extra points to Penn State on the spread in that kind of game against Ohio State. And against Indiana's not as physically imposing, which is why I still think Penn State should be favored in that game against the Hoosiers down the road. But again, a lot of things could change on both sides. I'm not entirely sure what that's going to look like in a month plus from now. Same thing with Ohio State. However, if we project them right now at this given moment of what we know with what teams are what they're going to have at this given moment, if they played those games right now, that's how I would project them. So it just becomes more of an uphill battle, but it is not impossible. It does make Penn State's playoff outlook a little more questionable because if they lose to Ohio State, if they lose to Indiana, coupled with the loss to Oregon, I don't think 9-3 gets them into the playoff because you lose all of your elite caliber games. You lose all of those top 10 matchups. I think Indiana will be top 10 by the time they play Penn State. Nebraska, Iowa, in theory, that's not going to be enough to sneak them in. I guess they will try to make a case like, hey, we play the Big Ten Conference. 9-3 should be good enough to get us a 12 seed. Maybe that happens if the rest of the other teams fall apart. The SEC, those Big Ten counterparts, Michigan, USC, that are all going to be vying for that same spot. Do you really want to leave it up to the discretion of the playoff committee? No, you don't. Beat Indiana or Ohio State. You go 10-2 with a win against one of those teams. That gets you into the playoff. Win one of those games, you control your destiny. Win both of them, you solidify your destiny, and you can get into the back into the Big Ten title against Oregon. So that is all on the table. becomes a lot more difficult. Now, how did Penn State get in this situation? This is LBU. This is linebacker room. Number 11, the tradition, the sticks. Well, it's the revolving door that has been the linebacker coaching spot. And it's unfortunate. I don't think it's anything that Penn State did intentionally, but Manny Diaz comes in, defensive coordinator / linebackers coach. He leaves to take a head coaching job. Kind of knew that. And then I don't think Penn State expected Tom Allen to leave after 1 year. Steps away to go to Clemson, right? Then that's 3 different linebacker coaches in 3 years. Of course you're not going to have stability. Of course you're going to have these depth issues because Manny Diaz, who was doing really well with recruiting linebackers and creating the linebacker room in his image, Tom Allen is supposed to go and recruit the same prospects that vibe with Manny Diaz, that want to play with Diaz. Well, Tom Allen wasn't able to close those recruitments that Manny Diaz had opened up. And then when Tom Allen started to find his stride in recruiting as a defensive coordinator and as the linebackers coach, he goes to Clemson. And I know that Dan Connor was on staff, but he's not leading the linebacker room per se. He's there, he's helping. He was the liaison between Tom Allen and the defensive play calling on Saturdays. We know about that, but it wasn't Dan Connor's linebacker room at the time. Now it is. So Penn State's going to have this issue solved. It's going to be squashed, but not this season, obviously, because this is a depth issue. You can't add depth. There's no free agent signings in college football. You can't fix this overnight like you can in the NFL, or at least amend it. Dan Connor is the right guy to lead this room. Penn State fans should be happy that a legacy like Connor is the linebackers coach. He's doing a phenomenal job. We already see the wins in recruiting, but for those investments to pay dividends, it's going to be 2-3 years. Hey, maybe you can go into the transfer portal again and get somebody comparable to Amare Campbell. I'm not saying you're going to get Amare Campbell, who's going to be a superstar contributor right out of the gate, but maybe you're going to be able to find another complementary piece in the linebacker room. So this isn't a 3-4 year situation, and maybe you figure this out this upcoming offseason. It's definitely possible because of the transfer portal, and thank goodness it's Dan Connor who's going to be leading the way. So it's not that this is a one-off situation, unfortunately. And it's because Manny Diaz became a head coach. It's because Tom Allen thought he had a better setup at Clemson. But now Dan Connor solidifies all of that. So this will be figured out by this offseason. Maybe two. And I just wish Tony Rojas the best, of course, in this situation. You know, it's a shame. You don't want to see anybody lost due to injury like this. But Penn State will have to find a way to adapt and overcome. And we'll follow it and keep an eye on the linebackers as the spotlight goes immediately to them in these high-stakes situations. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Appreciate your support on the show. Thank you so much to the everydayers out there. If you're not an everydayer, become one. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast for the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams. Once again, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. We have an exciting moment to share with the Locked On Podcast Network. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV are proud to present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year, Gary Patterson, and former college star Jesse Holley, and of course, all of Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV.